Not long for this world. Say there's a man who lives on the 12th floor of a 14-story building. He's lived there long enough to know every face in the building, though he doesn't know any names. He's not the type to introduce himself, but he has a good memory, and over the years, an elevator will eventually show you everyone. Everyone, except the ones who always take the stairs. He knows that the button for the 14th floor is pressed by 3 people, usually. There's the pale, tired woman on 14 who seems to live in deliberate solitude. He has never once shared the elevator with her, never caught her scent on anyone riding down from above. There's the heavy-set man in his 40s, friendly and loud, who brings home a different woman every few weeks. And there's the elderly woman who carries herself like she once had money and still acts like it. She smells faintly of medication, and a home health aide visits her several times a week, smelling the same way. He knows the other floors too. The big family on 8, the 2 guys on 11 who drink too much, the young woman on 13 who runs every morning, his own neighbors, the people below. But that's not the point. One evening, coming home from work, he steps into the elevator behind a man in a dark suit. The man in the suit presses 14. Our man almost forgets to press 12. He spends the ride up trying to figure out which apartment the stranger is visiting. The tired recluse? The loud one with the women? The old woman with the aide? The doors open at 12, and he steps out, no closer to an answer. He forgets about it almost immediately. By the 4th time he sees the man in the suit, the thought starts to take shape. Someone must have moved out, and this is the new tenant. He's in the building often enough. But over the following days, he runs into all 3 of the 14th floor regulars, one after another, and they're all still there. A dull, nagging curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to ask around. "You know," he starts, finding himself alone in the elevator with the reclusive woman, "I've been seeing a new face in the building lately. Someone from your floor, and I've been meaning to..." He stops, because when he tries to picture the stranger, actually picture him, there's nothing there. He knows every face in the building down to the smallest detail, and this man he has ridden with 4 times, has left no impression whatsoever. Not a feature, not a detail, nothing. "Yes," the woman agrees, not waiting for him to finish. "It has been unusually humid lately, hasn't it?" He blinks. He lets it go. He's used up all his nerve for the day. That evening, he stands over the kettle and loses track of what he was doing. He goes into the bathroom and forgets why. The stranger fills his thoughts without occupying any of them. No face to land on, no feature to hold, just the fact of him, circling. He tries the heavy-set man next. The man talks cheerfully for 2 full floors about a woman he met at a bar in Midtown, and another one he's been texting, and a third who he thinks might actually be serious this time. No mention of any stranger. He tries the elderly woman on a Wednesday. "And you really can't find it anywhere," she says, in response to something she apparently heard him say. "Not at any pharmacy in the city. I've had 3 different doctors call it in." He nods along. He says something vague and agreeable. He starts to feel like he's dreaming. He leaves water boiling too long. He walks into rooms and stands there. The stranger takes up all the space in his head while remaining completely, impossibly featureless. No face, no name, no floor, no explanation. Just the fact of his presence, and the 14th floor button, and the dark suit. Then, one evening, the man in the suit steps into the elevator behind him and presses 14. He's facing away, dark hair, one visible ear, a fraction of a jawline. Nothing more. Our man gets off at 12. Out of habit, he reaches for his keys. And then he stops. Of course, All he has to do is wait, listen for the knock, figure out which door, and then he'll have a reason, a name, an apartment number, something to hold on to. He stands very still in the hallway, keys in his fist, trying not to make a sound. The elevator rises. The hum of the cable gets fainter, and then fainter still, and then it doesn't stop. The building is 14 floors. The elevator should have reached the top and gone quiet by now, but the sound keeps going, as though the shaft has no ceiling, as though the car is still climbing into something that has no floor number and no name. By the time he understands that the sound is growing louder again, that the elevator is coming back down, and that it never stopped, and that its doors never opened, his hands are shaking too badly to find the right key. The elevator settles, stops. His floor. The doors open. Footsteps cross the landing and stop behind him. "You shouldn't have done that," the visitor says. And now he could turn around. He could look. He could finally see the face he has somehow never been able to hold in his memory, and understand at last who this man is and which door he was always heading for. But he can't make himself turn. He buys himself one more second, and then another, pulling each one out like a splinter, and he asks every second not to end. One of them listens and stays. Screams in the elevator. It was close to midnight. After a brutal day at work, I was finally heading home. I pushed through the lobby doors of my building, one of those older high-rises on the north side of Chicago, nodded to the front desk attendant, and made my way to the elevators. Our building has two, a passenger elevator and a service elevator, both called by the same button in the hallway. I pressed the button and glanced up at the floor displays. Both were descending from the 18th floor. The passenger elevator stopped at the 5th on its way down. The service elevator reached me first. I stepped in, hit the button for my floor, the 22nd, leaned back against the wall, and stared at the display panel. All I wanted was a shower and my bed. I was pulled out of my own head by a hard jolt as the elevator passed the 4th floor. It shuddered to a stop. The lights went out. You've got to be kidding me. Trapped. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. In the mirror across from me, I caught my own reflection. Pale face, dark circles under my eyes. I barely recognized myself. I needed to get out of here. I started scanning the panel for the emergency call button. That's when I heard it through the wall. A quiet sob. I froze. The silence felt like it was pressing in on me. I stood there for 30 seconds, maybe more, not moving. Nothing. I reached for the emergency button again. Then, a woman's voice, barely above a whisper, from the other side of the wall, right where the passenger elevator shaft would be. Please don't. I can't breathe. My first thought was that the passenger elevator was stuck too, and someone inside was having a panic attack. I called out, "Hey, are you stuck in there?" What came back wasn't an answer, just a low, repetitive murmur. Don't. I knocked on the wall with my fist. "Hey, just try to breathe. Help will come. Maintenance will get us both out." I told her to take slow, deep breaths. Then I remembered I still hadn't called for help. I hit the emergency button. Nothing but a busy signal. That low, ominous drone. I tried twice more. Nothing. I swore out loud at the broken equipment. That's when the knocking started from the other side. Dull, heavy impacts. The whole cab shook. I backed against the opposite wall. The knocking got harder, and then the screaming started. Raw, desperate, the kind of sound that makes you want to cover your ears and close your eyes. "Let me out! Let me out!" Cold sweat ran down my forehead. I couldn't make sense of any of it. I was yelling back, slamming every button on the panel. Door open, door close, lobby, every floor. My brain was scrambling for some rational explanation. The screaming sounded unhinged, like something had broken loose in that person's mind. Then, all at once, the doors slid open. Standing in front of me was my neighbor from the 21st floor, staring at me like I'd lost my mind, wearing boxers and flip-flops. "Why are you screaming?" he said. I couldn't get a word out. I just stood there catching my breath. I stumbled out of the service elevator on shaking legs and hit the call button. The passenger elevator arrived almost instantly. The doors opened. It was empty. "Did you get stuck?" my neighbor asked. "Yeah, it does that on this floor sometimes. I take the stairs now. All 22 flights. Every single day." In the elevator shaft. I don't know why I'm even writing this down. I guess I just need to get it out. This happened last year, sometime in early fall. Nothing special about the day. I'd run some errands, picked up a package, stopped by a friend's place for maybe half an hour. I got back to my building around 6 in the evening, give or take. The elevator in my building had been out of service for almost 2 weeks. Not broken exactly, just nobody was in any rush to fix it. Classic. So I did what I'd been doing every day. I started walking up to the 9th floor. Same as always. Dust in the stairwell, that hollow echo, the weak yellow light that never quite reaches the corners. Somewhere between the 4th and 5th floor landing, I heard something. It came from inside the elevator shaft. Not the kind of sound you could dismiss, not a creak or a building settling. It was distinct. Movement. Like something shifting its weight, pressing against metal. The elevator hadn't moved in days. The call button panel had been dark since the thing went down. I stopped walking. The sound didn't stop with me. A slow scrape, then a footstep, or what felt like one, on bare metal, then a dry, sliding rasp, like a cable being dragged across something. All of it coming from behind the elevator doors. My first thought was, maybe someone got trapped in there overnight and is only now making noise. Absurd. But I stood there thinking it anyway. Then the sounds moved. Not sideways. Down. Like whatever was in there had started climbing lower, deeper into the shaft. I kept going. By the time I hit the 6th floor, I'd mostly talked myself out of it. And then it started again. Louder this time. And closer. Right behind the elevator doors on that landing, like something was pressed flat against the other side. I leaned in, put my ear close to the gap in the doors. Shuffling. Right there. Inches away. My keys slipped out of my jacket pocket. They hit the concrete floor and scattered, loud, sharp, echoing up and down the stairwell. And then, less than a second later, bang! A single hard impact against the door, then another, fast, rhythmic, heavy, like someone beating on it with the flat of their fist, except the intervals were wrong. Too short. No wind-up, no recovery time, just impact after impact, half a second apart, over and over. I stood there for a few seconds listening to whatever was on the other side of that door pound the metal a few inches from my face. And something just clicked. I don't belong here. That's the only way I can describe it. A feeling that I was intruding on something, and it knew I was there. I grabbed my keys and ran.
took the last 3 floors at a sprint, got inside my apartment, locked the deadbolt, put the chain on, checked it again. After that, silence. I eventually convinced myself I'd just spooked myself, overreacted. Then, morning came. Someone on the 10th floor found the elevator doors open. Not the car. The car was still sitting on the ground floor where it had been for 2 weeks. Just the shaft doors on 10, standing wide open. A straight drop down. The kind of thing that's mechanically supposed to be impossible. Those doors have an interlock that only releases when the cab is physically present at that floor. They were open anyway. Perfectly, evenly open. Like someone had pushed them apart from the inside. There was one more thing. Up on the roof, there's a utility access hatch. Always kept locked, always has been. Someone noticed one side of it was hanging crooked, not freshly broken. The rust on the hinge said it had been like that for a while. Long enough that no one had thought to mention it. From the roof, if you know what you're doing, you can drop into the mechanical chase that runs alongside the elevator shaft. Tight, but possible. Nobody found anything up there. No footprints, no gear, nothing left behind. A guy from the 5th floor said he'd seen a figure on the roofline the previous afternoon, just standing there. Couldn't describe it clearly. Said it looked wrong somehow, but couldn't explain why. I don't take the elevator now, even though it's been fixed for months. On the 6th floor, I don't slow down. I just move faster and keep my eyes straight ahead. That first bang, I still hear it sometimes. The way it came back so fast, like whatever made it didn't need a moment to pull back and swing again. Like it was already there, waiting on the other side. If I'd stayed one more second at that door, I think something would have come through, and I don't think anyone would have found me after that.
The elevator. It was an old building with an old elevator. A very small elevator, one that could barely fit 3 people. Martin had been afraid of it from the first day he and his father moved in. He'd always been nervous in elevators, always half convinced they were about to drop. But there was something about this one that was worse than most. It had a mean feeling to it. Maybe it was the dim lighting and the walls that had gone brown with age. Maybe it was the door, which never stayed open more than a few seconds before snapping shut. Maybe it was the shudder the whole cab gave every time it left a floor, like it was working harder than it should have to. Or maybe just the size. 2 people in there already felt like a crowd. The day after they moved in, Martin tried the stairs. They were just as bad. Dark and narrow, with a couple of landings where the bulbs had burned out and nobody had replaced them. His footsteps echoed behind him the whole way up, like someone was following close. By the time he dragged himself to the 17th floor, he was winded and shaky. His father, who worked from home, wanted to know why he was out of breath. "Why didn't you take the elevator?" The look on his face said everything else. "You're already scrawny and clumsy and weak. Don't add coward to the list." After that, Martin always took the elevator. He told himself he just had to get used to it, same as he'd gotten used to the kids at school. He never got used to it. He was always waiting for it to stop between floors and trap him there for hours. The other passengers didn't help. He hated being that close to strangers, hated the way everyone stared at the doors or the floor numbers and pretended no one else was there. One morning, the elevator stopped at the 14th floor and a large woman got on. She was wearing an old green coat that billowed around her. Martin could have sworn the cab actually sank a little under her weight. She was so wide that her coat brushed against him and he had to press himself into the corner. There was no room for anyone else. The door snapped shut behind her. She didn't turn to face the door. She turned to face Martin.
He glanced at her quickly. Heavy jowls, no real chin, just a thick column of neck. Small blue eyes, sharp and fixed. They seemed to be drilling into his face. He looked away at the floor numbers above the door. She didn't turn around. Was she still looking at him? He glanced back. She was. He looked away again. He wanted to close his eyes, wanted to face the corner, but how could he? The elevator ground its way down to 12, then 11. Those small eyes were still on him. She had to be crazy. Why else would she stare like that? What was she going to do? She didn't do anything. She just watched him and breathed, loud and steady, until the elevator reached the lobby. Martin wanted to push past her, but there was no room. He had to wait while she turned and lumbered out. Then he ran. He didn't care what she thought. He ran past her and out through the front doors and kept running most of the way to school. He thought about her all day. Did she live in the building? He'd never seen her before, and it wasn't a big place. 4 apartments to a floor. Maybe she was visiting someone, but 7:30 in the morning was early for a visit. Walking home that afternoon, Martin felt the dread settle back in. But why should he be scared of some old lady? He felt ashamed of himself. He pressed the button and stepped into an empty elevator. He watched the floor numbers, hoping it wouldn't stop. It stopped at the 3rd floor. The doors opened. Green coat, pig pink face, blue eyes already looking straight at him as if she'd known he'd be there. It felt like a nightmare, but she was real. "Going up?" Martin said, his voice coming out thin. She nodded and stepped in. The door snapped shut. He watched her thick hand reach for the buttons. She didn't press 14. She pressed 18, the top floor. The elevator shuddered upward. This morning she'd gotten on at 14. So what was she doing on 3, going to 18? Was she waiting for him? That was crazy. She probably had friends all over the building. Or maybe she cleaned apartments. That made sense. He could feel her looking at him. The numbers blinked by slowly. It seemed like they were moving slower than usual. Maybe the wait was too much. What if the elevator got stuck? What if the cable? They were at 5. He wanted to press 7, get out, take the stairs, but he couldn't reach the panel without touching her, and he didn't want to do that. He'd be home in a minute. Just 1 more minute. When it stopped at 17, he had to squeeze past her, feeling the scratch of that awful coat. He was afraid the door would close before he got through. She turned to watch him as it shut. Now she knows I'm on 17, he thought. That night at dinner, he tried to bring it up. His father was watching TV. "Have you ever seen a strange woman in the elevator?" Martin asked. "Don't think so," his father said, not looking up. He knew it was probably a mistake, but he needed to tell someone. "I ran into her twice today. The weird thing is, she just stares at me the whole time. Do you think maybe she's someone's housekeeper, or—" "What's your problem now?" his father said, turning around. "Nothing. I just thought it was strange. People don't usually stare like that in elevators." "What am I supposed to do with you, Martin? Now you're afraid of some poor old woman?" "I'm not afraid." "You are," his father said. "When are you going to grow up and stop acting like this?" He turned back to the TV. Martin made it to his room before he started crying, though his father probably knew anyway. He didn't sleep much. In the morning, when the elevator doors opened, the fat woman was waiting inside. Martin stood in the doorway, unable to move, and then took a step back. When she saw him, something changed in her face. She smiled. A slow, deliberate smile, just as the doors closed. Martin ran for the stairs. It was dark on the landing, and he fell. His father drove him to the ER without saying much, clearly disgusted that his son was such a coward and such a fool. Martin had broken his leg. He went home on crutches. He couldn't use the stairs now. Had she known? Had she smiled because she knew what was coming? At least his father was with him in the elevator on the way back from the hospital. No room for the fat woman then. And if she got on anyway, his father would finally see her, would finally understand. Martin could stay in the apartment for a few days. Doctor's orders, rest. He was safe, for now, at a distance from her. "Oh, almost forgot," his father said, and pressed 9. "What are you doing?" Martin asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I told Mrs. Ullman I'd stop by." His father glanced at his watch and stepped off the elevator. "Take me with you. I want to come." Martin tried to move on his crutches, but the door was already closing. "Afraid to ride alone?" his father said. "Grow up, Martin." The door shut. Martin jabbed the button for 9. Nothing happened. The elevator stopped at 10. The fat woman was waiting. She was inside before he could get out. The door closed. The elevator started to move. "Hello, Martin," she said. She laughed and pressed stop.